Hi, now we are going to discuss about the concept called as class and objects. The concept class and objects is already we have known when we studied the concept called as object oriented programming in the language C++. So in Java also the class and object plays a vital role because we have well known that without class it is not possible to write even a single program in Java, and also we know that Java is one of the object oriented programming language. So class defines the state and behavior of the program components. Those components are called as objects. Classes create objects and object use methods to communicate between them. The classes are the group of related data items and the functions involved in this. In Java, the data items are called as fields and function are called as methods. In general, we can define class is a collection of member and member function. The members are called as fields and member function are called as methods. With the help of objects, it is possible to access those members of the class, and also we can call the methods of the class in order to do some processing. So in Java, the syntax to create a class is we have to use the keyword class, yes, class, followed by the class name, and within the braces we have to give the members, we have to declare the members, that is data type, followed by instance variable. Those members we can call it as instance variables, and we can have our own methods inside the class. After that we have to close the brace. In C++, we have we will close the brace by semicolon, but in Java there is no need for that semicolon. So as an example, class, class name, and Java the naming convention says that the class name should start with capital letter. So class followed by class name, and within the brace we have declared the instance variables int roll number, char name, and int s1, s2, s3, total, and average. So this is what the way to declare the class in Java. So this is what we call it as class definition. So objects, an object in Java is essentially a block of memory that contains a space to store all the instance variables. The objects in Java are created using the new operator. So the objects, with the help of object, it is possible to access the members available in the class, and also we can call the methods that are all available within the particular class. So an example for the class student stu, let us create the object s1 equal to new. The new is the keyword which is used to allocate the memory, and followed by stu of. The stu of is the constructor. So another way to create an object is we can declare the object in the first line, that is stu s1. After that, in the second line we can allocate the memory to the particular object through the keyword new. So let us have a simple quiz. What is stored in the object obj in the following lines of Java code. Box obj memory address of allocated memory of object is the option A, option B is null, option C is any arbitrary pointer, and option D is garbage. Let us have a minute of time. Let us have a think, and we will find the answer for this simple question. So for this question, I think you people may find out the answer. The correct answer is B. Yes, definitely. Because box obj declares the object. It does not allocate any memory. So there is no more memory is allocated for the object obj. So there is a null in the object obj. So let us have a discussion on new operator. The new operator dynamically allocates memory for an object as a general form class variable, that is object name equal to new class name of. Here the class name of will act as a constructor, so that a constructor defines what occurs when an object of class is created. The constructors are an important part of all classes and have many significant attributes. So we are all well known that the method which is in class name is called as constructor. So after new we have to give the constructor in order to allocate the memory with the help of new operator. Constructors. Constructors have the same name as the class itself. They do not specify the return type. So we have to note it, that important concept, that is the constructor does not have any return type. The reason behind this is they return the instance of the class itself. As the constructor returns the instance of the class itself, the constructor does not specify any return type. So in Java, constructor is a block of code similar to the method. The constructors are called when an instance of the object is created and a memory is allocated for the particular object. So it is a special type of method which is used to initialize the object. So constructors will be the special type of the method. Those constructors are used to initialize the object. So when the constructor is called is every time when an object is created using the new keyword, at least one constructor is called. That constructor is called as a default constructor. So rules for creating the Java constructor. The constructor name must be as same as class name if and only if it is called as constructor. If you give some other name, then it will be not called as constructor. A constructor must not have any explicit return type. We have already known that as the constructor return the instance of the class itself, it does not have any return type. The Java constructor cannot be abstract, a static, final, and synchronized. So as a note, we can use access modifiers while declaring the constructor. It controls the object creation. In other words, we can say we can have private, protected, public, or default constructors in Java. So let us have a look on this for a minute. So the various types of constructor: default constructor and parameterized constructor are the various types of Java constructor. So there is no more copy constructor in Java, but it is possible to simulate the concept of copy constructor in Java. So the default constructor, a constructor is called a default constructor when it does not have any parameter. So let us have an example: class vehicle. In that vehicle there is a vehicle of, it will act as a constructor because this method is in class name. It does not contain any parameter, so we can call it as default constructor. So within this system.out.println there is a message bike is created. So after closing the particular constructor, so in the main method, that is public static void main of string args of, let us create a object b for the particular vehicle class. So vehicle b equal to new vehicle of. Whenever we allocate the memory using the keyword new, and we use it to call the constructor vehicle of. The vehicle of is in class name, so it is called as constructor. This default constructor will be automatically called in order to instantiate the particular object b. So the vehicle of will be called automatically, and within this the bike is created will be print. So when you execute this program, you will get the output like this. Have a look on this for few seconds. So let us have one more example, the example of default constructor that displays some default values. So let us have class student3 as a class name, and within the brace let us have the instance variables, that is id and string name, that is int id and string name, and void display of, let us have method void display of. In that method system.out.println of id plus name. So within this main method, let us have a object s1 and s2. So new student3 of, it will call the default constructor. So even though we didn't give any definition for the particular constructor, it will call the default constructor. The Java compiler will call its own default constructor. So when you call s1 dot display of, that is id plus name, there is no more id and no more name, so 0 and null will be printed. And s2 dot display, so again the default value of id, instance variable id, that is in int variable id. For int variable the default value will be 0, and for string the default value will be null. So let us get into the next concept, that is Java parameterized constructor. So a constructor will be called as parameterized constructor if it contains specific number of parameters. For example, class student4 of, here again int id and string name are the instance variables, and student4 of will act as a constructor. Here we have two parameters, that is int I comma string n. Those I value will be copied to id and the n value will copy to name, and in display method we will print those id and name. Here the parameters are passed, so it will be called as parameterized constructor. And then public static void main of, here for s1 object let us pass the values as 111 and current, and for s2 let us pass the value as 222 and rn. And when you print this, you will get the output like this. that is triple one Karan and triple two Aryan will be printed. Let us discuss the concept called as constructor overloading in Java. So as an example, class student 5, here three parameters id, name and age. The first parameterized constructor student 5 of int I comma string n, and in the second parameter is a constructor int I string n and int a. Here we are having two constructors. Both the constructors are parameterized, but they are differed by its arguments, number of arguments. In the first constructor we are having only two arguments, in the second constructor we are having three arguments, and within the display method we will print those values. And for s1 we will pass only two values, triple one and Kandan, so it will call the first constructor because it contains only two parameters. And for s2 we will pass three arguments, so rather than calling the first constructor it will call the second constructor because it contains three parameters. Here this constructor overrides the previous constructor because as the arguments differs, as the number of arguments differs, the second constructor overloads the first one. So this is what we call it as constructor overloading. So constructor overloading in the sense as same as other overloading like function overloading. The constructor overloading also defines that when there is a difference in terms of arguments, then one constructor will be overloaded by another constructor. So we have to remember that it is not override. Don't use the word override. Some of the students in general they confuse between override and overload. This is called as overloading, constructor overloading. So the triple one Kandan, that is s1 will call the first constructor and s2 will call the second constructor. S1 dot display of and s2 dot display of will print the values respectively. As the age value is not sent for s1 object, so the default value will be 0, so the triple one Kandan and age will print as 0. And there is a difference between constructor and method in Java. So as the first thing, a constructor is used to initialize the state of an object. A method is used to expose the behavior of an object. The constructor will initialize, but the method will be called in order to expose some behavior, that is in order to do some process. And constructor must not specify any return type because it returns the instance of the class itself. A method must have some return type, at least if it does not return any value we have to specify by void. And the constructor is invoked implicitly, as whenever the object is instantiated the constructor will be called automatically, and the method has to be invoked explicitly with the help of object. If it is a normal method, with the help of object we have to invoke the method. If it is a static method without an object, we can invoke the method. And Java compiler provides a default constructor if you don't have any constructor in the class. If you didn't give any constructor in the class, the Java compiler will call its own default constructor. But there is no more default method that is provided by the compiler. That is, the method is not provided by the compiler in any case. And then the constructor name must be same as the class name, but the method name need not to be same as class name. So Java copy constructor, there is no copy constructor in Java. However, we can simulate this by copying the value from one object to another, like the copy constructor in C++. So there are many ways to copy the values of one object into another object in Java. They are by constructor, by assigning the values of one object into another, or by using the clone of method of the class object. Have a look on this for a few seconds. So let us have an example. Class student 6 and then int id and string name are the members of the class, and student 6 of int I comma string n, there is a parameterized constructor. In this I and n value will be copied, and one more constructor, that is student 6 of student 6s. This is to simulate the concept of copy constructor. Here id equal to s dot id, that is s, the id of the object s will be copied to the object which calls the particular constructor, and then name equal to s dot name, void display of id and name. In this display method we are going to print the id value of id and name, and then public static void main of, in this string s1, that is student 6 s1, new student 6 of triple one canon will be passed, so that the triple one will be stored in I and canon will be stored in n, and I will be copied to id and n will be copied to name. And then in the second object student 6 s2 equal to new student 6 of s1. So now the s1 object is copied to the next constructor, s1 is copied to s here, and id equal to s dot id. Now the s dot id, that is triple one, will be copied to s2's id, and then s dot name, that is kannan, will be copied to s2's name. So when you call s1 dot display of and s2 dot display of, it will print the values triple one and kannan respectively. So this is what way to simulate the concept of copy constructor in Java. Have a look on this for few seconds to have a clear cut idea. Let us discuss the concept called as method overloading. So if a class has multiple methods having same name but different in parameters, then it is called as method overloading. So we can say the methods which are in same name but differ by its signature, we can say by its signature also. Signature means that either in terms of parameters or in terms of its return type. So let us have an example, class adder of. In that class adder of, let us have two methods add of, that is static int add of. Here we have mentioned it as static because that particular method can be called without an object, and int as return type. And in the first method we have two parameters, int a comma int b, and in the second method we have three parameters, int a comma int b comma int c. And in the first method we will return a plus b, and in the second method we will return a plus b plus c. And in the next class, that is test overloading, let us have a main method, and then let us call this add method. As it is static, we can call the method without an object, so that with the help of its class we can call the method adder dot add of 11 comma 11. So it will call the first method. So 11 plus 11, 22 will be the output, and in the next case 11 11 11, so it will call the next method, and the value 33 will be the output. So this is what we call it as method overloading. Here the add method is of two, there is two add methods. The two methods are in same name, but they are differ by its parameters. In the first method we are having two parameters, and in the second method we are having three parameters. So references, you can refer tutorial points, Java T point, W3 schools or programmees.com. So these are all the websites I have referred. You can also refer for more clear idea in order to get more clear cut idea in this concept. So thank you. We will meet again.